Hi everybody, Monica Guzman coming to you live, getting set up on my end, making sure everything's synced up. Hope everybody's doing well. It is definitely not a boring time to be alive. While there are many boring things around us, it's not overall a boring time to be alive, for sure. So today, I want to wrap up the portion of these 2 weeks. I'm talking about the differences between American baseball and MLB. Obviously, the biggest difference is the leadership. It was the Jews residing on American soil who integrated the sport. But technically, I believe that without World War II, there wouldn't have been an integration. It would have continued being American baseball, and it would have continued being America's national pastime. I mean, the NFL didn't overtake them until 1972, so, you know. But I'm pretty sure all the compiling that took place, and then celebrating African players for doing tricks in the outfield, such as Willy Mays, I'm sure that took a toll on the population. And then there's also just the corporatization of MLB, bureaucratization of MLB. I believe O'Malley was a good owner, was a good steward, conservator of the LA Dodgers, but he sold out to a corporation and it just went downhill from there. I can't remember when the sale took place, but somewhere in the 2000s, right? Early 2000s. Before I go much further, Tommy Lasorda's widow passed away not yesterday, but the night before. At least Tommy is now resting in peace with his wife. That's what the Christian faith tells us. The Christian faith that helped build America tells us that we're just here. This is the waiting room, right? We are alive in the waiting room. We are proving that we're worthy of entering God's kingdom. We are proving that we're worthy of entering heaven. When we pass, we rest in peace mercifully, like Tyler Skaggs. And then today's also the anniversary of Yogi Berra passing away. Unfortunately, or it's too bad Yogi Berra isn't being remembered by a grandson or a son. It's up to his granddaughter to remember him, to keep his legacy alive, and she seems very Marxist herself, very much along the lines of your Molly Knights and Trevor Bauer's so-called co-agent. Oh man, I'm gonna have fun with that one later on. So we remember Tommy Lasorda. We wish the Lasorda family well. We pay our respects to them. I mean, in death, the ones who get left behind are the most selfish, right? We're the ones who are left with the hole in our hearts and our lives. When Tommy Lasorda passed away, I didn't find out right away. We were out doing stuff, and then we got back and I checked social media. And again, I like Twitter. Twitter might not like someone like me back, but I like Twitter. And based on my searches and based on my likes, the algorithm spits back stuff that I might be interested in. And that day, it showed me a lot of tweets about Tommy Lasorda passing away, and it was difficult, and I was in disbelief at first, just because Tommy Lasorda was larger than life. Tommy Lasorda was the LA Dodgers in the 80s. The 90s, it got sketchy. I mean, the Darryl Strawberry acquisition, and then the team just sucked. I mean, we can admit this now, right? The LA Dodgers in the 90s sucked. They had Hideo Nomo or whatever, but that's like having Derek Jeter, who was never the best at anything. They were just there, but they rode the coattails of the Dodgers from the 80s, and we went and we supported them, and we had a lot of fun at Blue Heaven on Earth. I think the Ned Colletti era was pretty good too, but it wasn't until I told my dad that Tommy Lasorda had passed away that it was real. When you tell someone else, when you share information like that with someone else, like you yourself can handle it, you can maintain your composure. But it's when you tell someone else, it's when you speak it out loud, it's when you speak it into existence that it's like, it hit hard. And but now Tommy is resting in peace with his wife, a woman whom by all accounts he loved very much, and eventually all of us will rest in peace. So it's what we do with our time here, especially those of us that are blessed with intelligence, those of us that are blessed with other gifts such as being well-spoken, of the ability to use logic, good looking. It definitely goes a long way. Your looks definitely go a long way. Like, Tom Brady is a human Ken doll. Like, and as most men looks better with age. We know this. Men age well. Men age like fine wine. They get better with age. Tom Brady is no exception. Unfortunately, Tom Brady is working with the Marxists. He himself is a Marxist. So even though he's good looking, he's not using it for good. He's using it for the Marxist cause, which is very unfortunate. We'll see what his kids pick up, especially his sons. NFL meme, great Twitter account. He tweeted out when Tom Brady's kid was the ball boy for the Bucks. Tweeted out, oh my God, kind of saying they're going to end up, Tom Brady's going to retire and Tom Brady's son is going to become like the next 30-year player. 30 year. How long has Tom Brady been there? 20 years? But he could go into 30, right? So it's like Tom Brady's going to retire and then his kid's going to come into the fold, right? And his kid looks, that picture that was out there, even I bought it. I was like, wow, I could see this happening if that's what Tom Brady's son chooses. So, so kind of working my way into today's stream again. So last week I spent talking about the top 20 in categories that matter, such as batting average, innings pitched, at-bats, hits, strikeouts on both sides, one good, one bad. But now we know that the pitchers are compiling strikeouts. 3,000 strikeouts is the new steroids. Hit as many home runs as you can. So we're going to get a lot of mediocrity in that category. I mean, Christy Mathewson's in there. Just a compiler, African. Pedro's in there. I'm not sure Pedro had a better career than Curt Schilling. Pedro's Dominican, that's why he gets the bulk of the attention from the MLB Marxist media, whereas Curt Schilling is a white American, religious, it seems. So it's quite obvious why Curt Schilling isn't in the Hall of Fame. If Pedro and Curt were eligible to enter the Hall at the same time, Curt Schilling should have entered when Pedro entered. There's no reason why Curt Schilling should still be on the outside looking in. It just proves that the MLB media is Marxist and they are anti-American, especially anti-white. Curt Schilling has every right to express his feelings, especially because the American population stood with him, supported him, felt the same way. I mean, Curt Schilling and was far more exciting than Pedro. Pedro beats up old white men. I mean, I was watching that game with my dad. So a fight broke out, and then the benches cleared, and the Yankees' old white coach went after Pedro. Now, what would be interesting to find out is, why did he go after Pedro? Was Pedro cheating? I would imagine something set off that dude, right? And so he came after Pedro. Pedro shoved him to the ground. I mean, optic-wise, it looks really bad. Again, it's an old white dude who is shorter than Pedro. Just optically, it did not look good. And I was watching that with my dad, and I was like, whoa. My dad was just like, wow, these things happen. My dad was always very, stoic isn't the right word in this context. Very even in his emotions on some of these things. Like I haven't looked it up, but when Randy, I don't remember Randy Johnson that much during his career. But it's obviously because he was pitching in Seattle, like, for a long time, right? And then he started bouncing around a couple teams. But I do remember we were watching the game where Randy Johnson pitched something that buzzed by one of the LA Dodgers players, like right here. Oh man, that must have been scary for that guy. The guy wasn't that tall. The batter wasn't that tall. He was brown. And I'm saying that to narrow down who it could have been. So it was somewhere in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, most likely early 2000s. And I'm just saying brown because the batter wasn't white. And I'm giving you defining characteristics of the batter. I think I could find it. I think I could narrow it down. But I looked at my dad and I was like, is he allowed to do that? And obviously my dad's like, yes, he's allowed to do that. And I mean, I don't know if the batter was crowding the plate or because it was a right-handed batter. I don't know, but something Randy Johnson didn't like something that was going on, and he did something about it, and that's my Randy Johnson moment that I remember. But it's all in good fun, obviously not for the batter. I cannot. I mean, I can't imagine what it could be like to have a ball like that, just like right here. Right here. I mean, there's so much I want to add, but I have to not do that. So Christy Mathewson, that was a thing during the Christy Mathewson era. The pitchers did that to reclaim their strike zone, their area of the plate, right? That was a thing. They did that. And I think about David John LeMahieu, in this case where pitchers have gone after David John this season, obviously because he's awesome. But all those wonderful batting titles he has in his name. And he always hits for average. We know this, right? This is an off season for him. I'm not worried. But so during the Christy Mathewson era, that was a thing. Pitchers did that. What Randy Johnson did to that LA Dodger, it was normal. The pitcher reclaimed that area above home plate. There was no crowding by the batters allowed. So some pitchers went after the batter to reclaim that area, right? And the batters, if they chickened out before the ball came within a certain distance of them, they got laughed at. And so I think about some of the pitchers that have gone after David John this season. You see him facing the ball up until the last moment. It's like, wow, he's badass. He's total badass. That's why these pitchers, or these so-called MLB pitchers, are going after him, because they know, right? He's having an off season, but nonetheless, they know who David John LeMahieu is. He's a badass baseball player, could have competed with Ty Cobb, could have stood his ground against Christy Mathewson and Walter Johnson, Cy Young. It would have been an awesome, awesome, awesome competition. But, okay, so that's enough memory lane stuff for me, I think. So again, we remember Yogi Berra today, the anniversary of his death, I believe. We remember the Lasorda family, who has now lost its patriarch, and now it's lost its matriarch. But they're both resting in peace, and Tommy's with his wife. So we celebrate the life that they had, especially together. I mean, let's face it, right? Tommy Lasorda could not have been the easiest husband to have, for lack of a better word. But I mean, I'm sure he gave her a good life, and it shows the stoicism of some women. Just like Hap Anson's wife. I mean, he didn't cheat on her. He gave her a good life. He took her when they traveled. So maybe they had issues. They definitely suffered tragedies in losing their sons. But she didn't divorce him. And Tommy Lasorda's wife, Jo, same thing. Tommy Lasorda could not have been the easiest husband to have, but she stuck by him. She didn't divorce him when things got tough. She didn't fantasize about a different life with a different baseball manager or a baseball player. She married him and they stuck it out together. Shows the difference between the weak woman of 2021 who seeks out divorce, you know, just the bad state of woman in 2021 who turns to the government. She doesn't want Prince Charming, but she does want government in her life. Just the sad state of woman in 2021. And, you know, this is 3 generations in the making, right? The 1960s, sexual revolution, constantly going after the 1950s. But if you've watched my streams, you probably know by now that I don't believe in reverting back to the 1950s. I think we have to go back further. Early 1900s, late 1800s. That's why this chart that you see is my newest, but probably the most important for what I'm working on. What I'm trying to accomplish is just helping Americans realize that we need to go back to the days of self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency will chase away the illegals. It will chase away others who want to come here for welfare benefits and free stuff. It will help the population become more American, less of everything else. And it should have a positive effect. So for me, I might not be a blood American, but I'm definitely an American in mindset. If I do have, as I believe, I guess Aztec and Spanish blood, then that's where my intelligence comes from. It's definitely a good mixture because the Aztecs, although they weren't civilized, they did have their intelligence too. They engineered stuff that still stands in Mexico, just like the Romans engineered stuff that still stands in Europe. And so maybe I am the result of the best of these 2 worlds. And if that's the case, I am sharing as much as possible. It comes from a love of America and a love of American baseball. And so I'm definitely going to start piecing all these pieces of the puzzle that I've scattered and that I've shared with you guys. I've gone on severe tangents, and so that it starts making more sense to people, I'm going to start piecing these things together. Hopefully on Monday I'll have that prepared. This chart is definitely the beginning where I show you where the American economy was pre-Civil War, post-Civil War, and then post-World War II. From my perspective, we need to get the American economy back somewhere between post-Civil War, pre-Civil War. That's going to be the best for this country. And it's also going to get rid of the nerds. If you can't survive agriculture, manufacturing, you provide less value to America. America doesn't need a bunch of financial advisors, real estate investors. Those are definitely the careers that are causing home prices to skyrocket, property taxes to skyrocket. We need to deflate a lot of this stuff. We need to separate the Americans who will take the mantle from the founders and then move forward with it. The nerds, especially it's I mean, sure, can we have nerds? Sure, right? We need toilet cleaners too, right? So but the thing is, we just got to have more alphas than nerds. And then we've got to change the bell curve so that more just men are represented as opposed to so many nerds. Like right now, it's tough to feel bad for the homeless because, well, most of them are becoming homeless because they're on drugs or they're Marxists who bought into these Marxist ideologies. And so when you have so many homeless, it's hard to say, yeah, let's help the homeless because there's so many of them. You can't help the homeless the way we used to help the homeless, right? The bottom 1% is just ballooned into what, like the bottom 15, 20%. That's just a lot of people that we can't help at the same time. It's just not going to happen. It's impossible. And then on top of that, there is a movement to make people sick, to make people weak. MLB, because it's run by Jews, the Jews are proving to be the weakest physically. So if you have Jewish blood in you, most likely you have a chronic disease. Again, one of the guys that continues grifting on the right is Jewish, a nerd, and he has some sort of chronic condition that causes redness and swelling. So obviously he has a complex. I believe he did steroids, and he was a total gym brotard at one point. And so we can't follow someone who has those kinds of deficiencies and that kind of complex, because he's always going to be a nerd. Like, it's like people who lose weight, right? They get fatter than fat, then they lose the weight, but they look in the mirror and for some reason they still see themselves as fat. And so that's just a complex that stays with that person. So given that kind of complex, that is not going to be a good leader. And besides, the best leaders for America are American white Christian males. They are the fairest. That's who built this country. They have the right mindset, the right ideology. They're less likely to be diseased, chronic, less likely to be nerds. So if you are a nerd, so it's always interesting to find out where I hit nerves. I can't, I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to insult anybody on purpose. These are my observations and my judgments, and I'm reaching a lot more conclusions as I keep doing this. I guess it's me pointing out realities that you probably already knew, right? But more than anything, I'm not here to coddle anybody. If you need coddling, you are definitely not going to be a good leader for this country. I am speaking to you as an equal. I do merit an equal say. Obviously, because I'm a woman, I can't demand equality on a physical level, but on a brain level, on an intelligence level, I definitely merit that. So I'm not here to coddle anybody in that perspective. You could always counter argue me, right? And so, and don't counter argue from your emotions. That's stupid. I mean, you might as well be a girl, right? We know this. We know this already. So, as promised yesterday, I have an example that I want to lead in with. So today I'm talking about money, MLB money, but money in the sense of what they value whom they value, right? And that's going to take me back to this chart that I put together. Some of the data I got from EH.net, which I believe is the economics history of baseball, put together by a Marxist professor, I believe. But he may not be. You never know, right? It's tough to research. You know, everything's always got tentacles, right? And the way I encourage you guys to pick your battles, I pick my own battles. I have to pick what I research first, and then hopefully other things just fall into place. So Shoeless Joe Jackson was involved in the White Sox scandal of 1919, right? It was either 1919 or 1918, but that big scandal, right? He was involved in it, but people who defend Shoeless Joe Jackson claim that he wasn't a part of the cheating. So it was just a couple of bad apples that were taking money and they threw the game. That's why MLB Jews like Manfred, who wants to legalize gambling at the federal level, are just that. Again, that shows another difference. Manfred and company are not running American baseball. They're running MLB, which is Jewish, and they prop up Africans and Dominicans because they're 90% descendants from Africans. Pretty sure Haitians are also heavily African, thus their low IQ. So you've got this big scandal in American baseball, and they took care of it. And then you've got Jewish Robert Manfred bringing gambling back to baseball with gusto, like hardcore. And so, again, another separator between American baseball and MLB. That's why I don't believe we should have any sort of fight when we just say, it's been nice knowing you. So Shoeless Joe Jackson has been denied the opportunity to enter the hall by Jewish Robert Manfred time and time again, even though people who defend Jackson say that he wasn't involved in the cheating. Now, that's kind of like the Cap Anson scenario where A.G. Spalding had, the White Stockings. I'm sorry, I'm making connections here, and it's insane to like continually make these connections. So the White Stockings during the Cap Anson years were awesome, right? But they were also running amok. They were visiting the Tenderloin and drinking whiskey at 3 a.m, but they kept winning, so they couldn't really be suspended. And it turns out that 7 or 9 guys were really the ones running amok, right? And they paid A.G. Spalding what he spent on the PI that followed them around. And so, but that same PI started with Cap Anson, because is that when Cap Anson was already managing, or was he just a player? I'm not sure. But so the PI followed Cap Anson around, and Cap Anson was clean. He wasn't cheating on his wife. He wasn't drinking whiskey at 3 a.m. He was clean enough. I'm sure, like every man, I'm sure Cap Anson wasn't 100% clean. I mean, I'm sure there's some guys out there right now. We do know, because you guys get spotted at casinos. You guys get spotted. I mean, for me, the drinking, as long as you're not an alcoholic, I get it. It comes from your English roots, Irish roots. when it gets disruptive, then it is time to say, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time for AA. But you can't escape Twitter. You guys can't escape Twitter. But as we saw with A.G. Spalding, there was the version of Twitter back then too, where people wrote letters and said, we spotted such and such player at such and such at, you know, like Twitter today, but much slower in those days. Okay, big old tangent here. Okay, so Shoeless Joe Jackson was a part of the White Stockings. And the White Stockings have always had their issues, apparently. But okay, so Robert Manfred denies, once again, Jewish Robert Manfred denies a white player something. Like, Pete Rose is white. Pete Rose is white. Robert Manfred is Jewish. I mean, these are the facts, right? Robert Manfred, Jewish. Robert Manfred wants to legalize gambling at the federal level. That's a far cry from the American Christian values that ruled this country, that built this country. I mean, these are the facts, right? These are the facts. So I want to read something to you from a book. I haven't read this book in its entirety. So I end up sampling. I have to sample books written from basically the 1940s on, because I know that if I pick up a book about baseball written between 1940 and 2000, let's say 2005, I know it's most likely written by a Jew. And the Jews, as we see, I mean, the one that wrote Babe Ruth's obituary for the New York Times was a total asshole. Like, I guess there was no one at the New York Times who could have written a lovely obituary for America's greatest baseball player. And obviously it's because the Jews envy Americans. You are the weakest physically, and I'm going to talk about that. So, and if I don't talk about it on YouTube, I will talk about it on a different platform where I will probably get more views and attention. So pick your battles. Pick your battles, right? Okay. So the book is called Fall from Grace, The Truth. Let's see. Because I've got this bookmarked and I don't want to lose my page. Let's see. Let's do that. Fall from Grace, The Truth and Tragedy of Shoeless Joe Jackson. The little synopsis says, considered by Ty Cobb, so a connection to another American white player. Considered by Ty Cobb as the finest natural hitter in the history of the game, Shoeless Joe Jackson is ranked with the greatest players to ever step onto a baseball diamond, with a career batting average of .356, which is still ranked third all time. Now that's I have to double check that. I'm not sure if it's third. I don't remember off the top of my head. But at the time that this book was published, it was ranked third. Ty Cobb is ranked first with .366. That until the Black Sox scandal of 1919, which shook baseball to its core. Now that makes sense though, right? This is after Spalding passed away. Baseball was waning. Then you've got this scandal, which causes it to wane even further. But enter Babe Ruth. So there's a sports. I mean, what do you even call these guys? Like, dudes that just talk about sports and get paid to do it. Like, I don't even know what you call them. But there's one out there who is super, super hostile to Tom Brady. And this morning when I checked my Twitter feed, again, I'm so consistent that my personal Twitter algorithm gives me stuff that's of interest to me, and they usually get it right. And so there's this guy out there who talks about sports for a living and gets paid probably pretty well for it, who, again, very hostile to Tom Brady, but he's accepting that the greatness of Tom Brady in the NFL is here to stay and probably will be with us and with them for obviously at least this season, possibly next season. I don't want to say anything that will, like, that baseball superstition thing, right? Like, you don't want to put anything out there that could. So Tom Brady's here for the foreseeable future, right? And I was very impressed that he brought Babe Ruth into it. Like, New England just has a history of giving up great players. So Babe Ruth, Tom Brady, and Greinke. I like Greinke. I think Greinke is definitely brings fun to the NFL. The thing about, again, people who are like nerds, who are anti-push-up guys, envy people like Greinke, especially Greinke, because Greinke is showing us that he also vibrates on a different level. So Greinke apparently has never watched NFL film, whereas Tom Brady watches it like as if it was his 9-to-5 job, right? So like, but Greinke can do that because Greinke, the game that I saw this season, wow, when him and Tom Brady hook up, good stuff is gonna happen, and it was a treat to watch that. Like, so do I care that Greinke doesn't watch film? No, I don't, because he's getting it done when it counts on the field. But that doesn't mean that average guys and obviously below average guys can do what Greinke does. That is specific to Greinke. Just as what Tom Brady does is specific to Tom Brady, what Babe Ruth accomplished was specific to Babe Ruth. Now, does this mean that Tom Brady will dethrone Babe Ruth as the greatest American athlete, even if Tom Brady garners another championship? The answer is no. That doesn't mean that I don't want Tom Brady to keep piling them on. Be great. Do it. But I mean, Joe DiMaggio has 9 World Series championships, and we don't even argue that Joe DiMaggio is Babe Ruth status, right? Babe Ruth is Babe Ruth. Science said it. Science didn't create Babe Ruth. Science just figured out what made Babe Ruth great. And I'm going to definitely wait on this, but I'm not sure. No, I'm not even going to go there right now. It's not worth it. But it is something I'm going to talk about later on. So the author of this, this author wrote something on Charles Comiskey. That's another figure that I want to talk about. Ban Johnson's another one. John Montgomery is somebody else I want to talk about. The guy that moved the Washington Senators to Minnesota is definitely someone I want to talk about, because I know that's going to irritate the Marxist and the MLB Jews. So I'm definitely going to sing his praises, just because I know it's going to get under your skin. And I'm totally going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy that one. So there are other figures. Maybe this guy, this author, some legit. Oh, okay, it's the same author who wrote War on the Base Paths. Look at that. Okay, I don't know. I always need to make sure I find the bias, and maybe this author is a little legit. I'm not sure yet, but nonetheless, I want to read something. This is for Americans. So in War on the Base Pads, or from War on the Base Pads, I read to you what Detroit was like during the Ty Cobb era. And then I also read to you what kids were learning when Ty Cobb was in 3rd or 4th grade. It's nothing like what they're learning today with these mentally ill teachers, right? No woke shit, no mental illness, go be trans, go be gay nonsense. And so today I want to read to you something that's pertinent to Americans. I know a lot of us are worried about these small towns that are infested with opioids, that have been decimated. And my solution to this stuff will never be technology. We're in this because of technology. Zuckerberg isn't an American. All right. Zuckerberg is not American. The analytics guys aren't American. A lot of them are Jewish. A lot of them are Jewish. A lot of the technology, although maybe it got its start, I mean, look at the personal computer, right? It's wonderful, but Bill Gates is, I mean, how do you want to describe Bill Gates? He hung out with Epstein. How do you want to describe Bill Gates, right? Choose your own word, I guess. Because I haven't found the best way to describe Bill Gates, but I know, like they said in Yellowstone, he's, no, not this one. All the devils are here with us. My other favorite line from Yellowstone, or phrase, meaner than evil. Like, that is just poetry. It's beautiful. Meaner than evil. It's beautiful. So maybe I might end up watching, I'm not sure. So like, okay, I'm not going to go on this tangent. Forget it. So Shoeless Joe Jackson. This pertains to Americans who have given up on self-sufficiency. Ramsey Paul is tweeting right now a lot about the shortages that the parts industry is experiencing. So obviously the first question somebody who wants to find a solution to the problem should ask is, well, where are these parts coming from? Are these China-made parts, or are these American-made parts? So there is so much opportunity for Americans. Start somewhere. Start somewhere. I need to not stop talking about exactly what I'm going to do. Just because I guess we're all being monitored, right? And, but I know, and I can tell you this, these are not intricate, complicated plans. They're very simple. They ask very simple questions. It's all about getting America back to a place of self-sufficiency. So the parts industry for like heavy machinery, heavy equipment, eventually it's going to come into food production. Eventually it's going to come into transportation, even public. Plumbing. So something that's worth doing, things that you need, that you really need, purchase them now before the shortage comes to that sector and field. Like you've got to prepare, right? Like you've got to prepare. And this isn't prep or prepare. This is my washing machine in good condition? Is it old enough to where it's going to need a repair? A part's going to break. Maybe you should consider replacing the part now rather than waiting it out in case that part is no longer available in 6 months or a year. It's about self-sufficiency. Cassandra Fairbanks' Twitter has changed a lot because she has this adorable pet monkey now. So she's all in on that. But before the monkey, she was tweeting out a lot about her garden. And I guess she set up a greenhouse. So she on a food supply level is going to be okay. I mean, you can't live off of cherry tomatoes and stuff like that for a long time, but she definitely has bartering power with her neighbors, and that's what we should all be working on, upping our bartering power. So much to talk about, right? So much, everything. So my core topic is baseball, but from baseball you get all these tentacles, and every tentacle leads into another one. There's so much to talk about. But okay. So Shoeless Joe Jackson. Okay, let me read it and then let me dissect it a little bit for you guys. Toward the end of the 20th century, the rapid rise of textile mills in upstate South Carolina was a blessing to an untold number of impoverished families. The flourishing market opened the door to scores of localized facilities, offering full-time work to people in need of stable incomes. These venues not only provided housing in communities built for its employees, but offered educational opportunities, churches, and organized sports. To a degree, life in these areas revolved around the mill, and the people were connected by a palpable sense of kinship. For newcomers to these budding districts, there was high optimism. And for the parents of small children, it was understood that once their kids progressed to a certain age, they too would be welcomed to a job. The additional income derived by these children was necessary for numerous struggling households. That is so important, and that's why I'm bringing this to you guys. This isn't me celebrating jocks. Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Walter Johnson, Christy Mathewson, Cy Young, Babe Ruth were not jocks. They were men. Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling, not jocks. They're men. Madison Bumgardner, Zach Greinke, David John LeMahieu, they're not jocks. They're men. They're men. And so this isn't about jock worship. This is Americanism at its best. This tiny paragraph speaks volumes to the opportunity available to Americans. You just have to make it happen. I know nerds push back against this kind of stuff because you won't survive. You won't survive the work. You are not a product that allows you to participate in labor-intensive activities. Therefore, you will have little to no value going forward. These are truths. That's why I have no faith in the right-wing influencers who want to exert authority over us. I mean, please. If the battle came to us right now, what would you do? What would you do? Would you run, scared? That's my point. I don't think you guys would be able to face down the battle like George Washington did. Or the way, the Addams family did, that's interesting. Okay. I'm telling you, the more tentacles everywhere. I am not even going to fully get to what I intended to talk about because I've done such a great job talking about all these other things. But let's get to it anyway. Let's see if I can do this in like 15 minutes or so. So Babe Ruth, another way that we see that Babe Ruth is the greatest ever, greatest American athlete, greatest baseball player ever, is the fact that he was the highest paid player from 1922 through 1934, and he delivered. In that time span, first of all, The Yankees won their first championship in 1923 with Babe Ruth when he was paid $52,000 that season, which was the highest season average. In 1922, when Babe Ruth also earned $52,000, the Yankees were the runner-up. There is no New York Yankees without Babe Ruth. There is no New York Yankees without Babe Ruth. The Steinbrenner family has been an awful stewardship of this wonderful organization, of the coveted uniform, of its wonderful history. They have brought in mediocrity, domestic abusers. Domingo Germán assaulted his girlfriend in front of his teammates at a charity event. The Steinbrenner Yankee organization keeps him on the team. I mean, it is disgusting. Disgusting what the Steinbrenners have done to this wonderful American organization that was put on the map by Babe Ruth. Do you want to see it one more time? Let's look at it one more time. I love this chart. So here you see on one side what the Steinbrenner family has done to the New York Yankees. Okay, they garnered a few championships, not nearly as many as the previous ownerships. And on top of that, they did it with steroid users that they went out and acquired. By 2008, at least 26 steroid users had gone through their organization, 14 pitchers, 14 pitchers, 12 position players. Among them, Andy Pettitte, unfortunately, Roger Clemens, Jason Giambi. A-Rod is not on that list because he didn't confess to the steroid use until after the fact. But you see it here. You see it here where Jacob Ruppert and his heirs garnered 10 World Series championships during their ownership years of 1923 to 1943. Then Larry McFall, Dan Topping, Dale Webb garnered another 10 World Series championships from 1947 through 1962. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that even though Larry McFall, Dan Topping, Dale Webb were owners of the Yankees organization, they won those championships because there were no Africans on the team. There were no Africans. Okay, so let's go back to Babe Ruth. So I'm sure it was controversial during these years that Babe Ruth was being paid so much, but he delivered. So it's like you invest in something and people think you're crazy. Well, you are crazy if you lose your shirt, right? But you're not crazy if you like in Babe Ruth's case, where you garner 1, 2, 3, 4 championships and 2 runner-ups. Like, I think that was very well worth it. And on top of it, Babe Ruth put the Yankees on the map. The reason why New York Yankee fans in 2021 expect winning is because their organization got its official start winning. Okay, that's the American mindset. We're not losers. We're not mediocre. We're not weaklings. We don't participate in degeneracy. We don't give in to the vices. Different mindset, different culture, right? Now let's look at the Willy Mays era. So, like I pointed out the other day, actually, I had to cut it out because it looked dumb over here on this side. My cursor was there when I took the snapshot, but I believe Willy Mays tied for the highest paid player with Mickey Mantle? I think he was. But nonetheless, Mickey Mantle's team beat Willy Mays team nonetheless. So it was a good investment on the part of the Yankees to make Mickey Mantle the highest paid player by season average. And then you can see that Willy Mays was the highest paid player by season average 1959 through 1961, 1963. Oh, yeah. 1963 through 1965, and then once again 1967 through 1970. And what did that do? Absolutely fucking nothing. Nothing. It did nothing. Where's the San Francisco Giants on this? They are not. Am I right? You've got Baltimore Orioles in there a bunch of times. LA Dodgers a bunch of times. Obviously the Yankees a bunch of times. St. Louis is in there a bunch of times. So what does that tell us? Given what the San Francisco Giants organization has become, what does that tell us about them making Willy Mays the highest paid player by seasonal average? It makes sense that the San Francisco Giants are global homo in 2021. It makes sense that they gave steroids Barry Bonds so much money. It makes sense that they hired Gabe Kapler. It makes sense that they hired Farhan Zaidi. That doesn't make them great in the slightest. It's just them on their cultural journey. This is who they are. It's a team of degeneracy. It's a team that doesn't respect America. It's a team that will never be loved on a national level. I mean, you guys can celebrate yourselves however you want. MLB Marxist nerds will celebrate the Giants too. But again, what are you garnering in the pie of sports, right? Not very much. Your market share is like, I mean, what is it? 1% maybe? If that, right? So they can continue on their path to degeneracy. I'm sure it'll garner $15,000 per game. Congratulations. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? But so value. We're talking about value in terms of dollars. So what does MLB value post-integration? They value paying African players and Latino players a lot of money, even though there's no return on the investment. And then they complain about it. That is probably the height of stupidity, right? And then they complain about it. They paid Willy Mays all this money, garnered no championships. But that's okay, right? Because he's African and Jews are running the show. Okay. Same thing. Look, Hank Aaron, highest paid player by seasonal average, 1975, 1976 for the Milwaukee Brewers, who are a bunch of nobodies too. And they're run by Jews. But nobody complains about that, right? No. You complain about the white players. You guys made steroids Alex Rodriguez the highest paid player in MLB. But you don't complain about that. No. You don't complain about that. You complain about the white players. You complain about the white ones. So here you see, let me show you this. This one is not going to be very clear because of the colors that I used. But you can find this on my Twitter. So here you can see, this I picked up from Business Insider. The date on it is July 28, 2020. I have to position myself so I don't look hunchback. Sorry. This revs my engine, I guess. Okay, so Alex Rodriguez, to this day, he played. When did A-Rod finally retire? So it's got to be somewhere around 2014, right? He finally retired. Finally. So A-Rod, even though he retired somewhere around 2014, is still the highest paid player in MLB for $55.2 million. He is Dominican. He exerts his Dominican tendencies with the steroid stuff. He can argue that he's a New Yorker, but that's not true. In the sense that he probably grew up around other Dominicans who share his view of the world, right? But whatever. So he finally confessed to using steroids 2001 through 2003. Those are his MVP years, by the way, when I don't believe the Texas Rangers were even competitive. But that's a trend. That's an MLB trend. They reward mediocrity. They reward degenerates. They reward cheaters. It's MLB culture through and through. They reward dudes who assault women. So it's so stupid. Like, you're feminist in the sport. They go after the white guys. Well, why aren't you going after your Domingo Germans, your Obdul Herreras, your, who else is a total degenerate that's still playing in MLB? They go after the white guys. They go after the low-hanging fruit, which is like, that's just why they have no credibility as far as I'm concerned. So whatever. Okay, then you've got Albert Pujols as the second highest paid player. Another Dominican, still playing, no titles since 2010. So he's basically just been compiling from 2010 on. And I will show you when I dissect the Hall of Fame, there's several years where several Latinos were inducted in, like Vladimir Guerrero Sr. I mean, it's gone to the point where it's just last man standing. It's last man standing. It's just last man standing. That's what they're going by. And so then you've got Miguel Cabrera, a Venezuelan. This is the guy that was supposed to erase Ty Cobb from Detroit Tiger history. That's never going to happen. I guess the owner's from Macedonia. There's got to be some Marxist Jew thing in him, because they tweeted out that Miguel Cabrera apparently is the hero that the Detroit Tiger organization deserves. Well, okay, if you value mediocrity, then obviously he's your hero. Obviously, if you're looking for baseball greatness, then you understand that the greatest Detroit Tiger is Ty Cobb. And Miguel Cabrera, no titles since 2015, so he's basically been compiling ever since. Then you've got Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter was never the best at anything. Nonetheless, he is the fourth highest paid player. African. Spent his career in the Yankees when the Yankees had a culture of steroids under the Steinbrenner ownership. Product of the MLB media narrative, namely the New York media, which had power. That's gone. No career titles. Once again, Derek Jeter was never the best at anything. He didn't merit a first ballot Hall of Fame entry, let alone a unanimous Hall of Fame entry. I mean, Derek Jeter should be, if Derek Jeter was going to get in, it should have been on the 10th. There's nothing great about Derek Jeter. Nothing great about Derek Jeter. Then you've got compiler CC Sabathia, African. He also spent several years with the New York Yankees when the Yankees had a culture of steroids under the ownership of the Steinbrenners. No titles after 2010. No titles after 2010. And he is going to be my prime example of 3,000 strikeouts is the new steroids, hit as many home runs as possible. Just a compiler. Nothing special. Not a first ballot Hall of Famer. If they vote him in on the first ballot, it's simply because he's an African. And that's it. Carlos Beltran, we all know now that he is a total cheater. We all know about the 2017 Astros, Puerto Rico. No career titles, yet he is the 6th highest paid player in MLB history, followed by Justin Verlander. Is Justin Verlander white? I don't know why I think that Justin Verlander is Jewish. I'm not sure why I get that. I think it's because there's some dude that tweets who has the last name Verlander, and he's a total Marxist. So maybe that's why I feel like Justin Verlander, if he's not Jewish, he's a Marxist. So Justin Verlander, the LA Times, pointed out that he's a possible cheater with the sticky stuff, and he was on the Astros during 2017 when we all know that the Astros cheated. So obviously Verlander benefited from that some, right? And then you've got Manny Ramirez, Dominican, steroids. He tested positive in 2003. And so according to me, all his statistics, therefore, are irrelevant. And then you get to number 9. There's Zach Greinke. So the first clean American on the highest paid list comes in 9th. Why is that? Well, obviously because MLB isn't run by Americans, let alone Christians. So Zach Greinke comes in at number 9, 100% earned every penny of his contract. 100%. And then there's the fact of all the stuff that the analytics has done to him. I actually believe that MLB's studying Greinke. They're trying to figure out how he pitches a 66 mile per hour fastball or whatever, right? So his fastball speed is the same as his breaking ball speed or whatever, right? And so I believe that MLB is studying Zach Greinke the way science studied Babe Ruth. They're trying to figure out how he's so great, which proves that Zach Greinke is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So let me start wrapping up. I have more, but I will start it tomorrow. Tomorrow I will go into my cross-check test. I'll talk more about that. So today's Wednesday. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I will see you back here tomorrow as close to 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as possible, talking about the differences between American baseball and MLB and how they define greatness, how they value stuff differently. And obviously, they're run by different cultures. Therefore, you get steroid users as the highest paid players where, I mean, he's not even an American. They don't even pay Americans that kind of money. And when they do, well, we can talk about that tomorrow. So thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end. I will see you guys tomorrow live once again. Talk to you soon.